This video is sponsored by Squarespace. If you're after a website, a domain or an online store, make your next move with Squarespace and use the discount code Andrew Marr.
G'day there everyone. We are headed off this afternoon to Waterfalls, which is down near Pemberton. It's in a national park, and on the maps it actually says that I might actually get there just after 4:30, and by 4:30 the national park may have closed. I didn't actually realise that they closed national parks. But anyway, we're going to drive around there. We're only about 10 minutes away from there anyway, and we'll see whether it's open. Hopefully it's still open when we arrive. Alright, so we're at Waterfalls. You'll probably hear it in the background. There's lots and lots of water rushing down the falls itself. It's a beautiful little area around here. Lots of little views and little advantage points. But to shoot the falls itself, you're quite limited. You can only access the bank on one side of the falls. You really can't go up very close to the falls, and if you do, you're just going to get a lot of spray back, so I've given that up. You might be able to make behind me, there's a bridge. It's one of those unsteady rope wire bridges that kind of sway as you walk through it. And there's possibly a shot there, but I'm just worried that I'm not going to be able to keep the camera still, because even if I have it on a tripod, the bridge moves around. So what I've decided to do is come down at the one point where I think I can get as close to the water as possible and shoot up at the falls. So let's give that a go. How am I doing for time? It's around about 5:37. The sun sets. Not that we're going to get a sunset here, it's plenty of cloud, but the light is pretty much going to disappear at sunset, which is 4 minutes past 6, so I've got about less than half an hour. So I've got the 14 to 30, and I reckon I could get a shot somewhere between 30 and 20 mil, so I'm happy with that guy. I don't bother trying to measure it up with an iPhone. I don't see the point because the iPhone only has one focal length, so I just use my camera. If you can't use your camera to get shots, or if you can't use your camera to quickly work out what the shot's going to look like, you need more practice at shooting with your camera. When I am in the rain, which I prefer not to be in the rain, but if I am, you've got to try and keep your camera and your gear as dry as possible. I tend to have two cloths, one that I try and get most of the water and moisture off, which is going to be that one for today, and then I've got my drier one just as the rain starts to come in. But that light is starting to warm up, so it might get a little bit interesting. So I've composed my shot up. I'm at just less than 20, so somewhere around 18, 20 mil focal length. That gives me a fairly wide shot because I've got the water kind of rushing in almost underneath the camera and then away to the right-hand side. So the wider I get, the more of that water I'm going to get into the shot. And of course, the more of the water that I get, the more patterns, and that is pretty much going to create a leading line up to the falls in the background. I've just taken a test shot. Off that test shot, I was checking my composition, so I was pretty happy with that. I'm also checking my darks and lights, and notice that while my dark areas were pretty good, I'll probably be able to get some detail out of that. The highlights, which are pretty much the sky, are blowing out a little bit. Now, there's lots of cloud there, so I'm not worried about that too much because there's not a lot of detail I'm going to be able to get there, but there are some branches and trees and leaves across there. So if it's blown out too much, none of the details of those branches are going to come up in the image. So what I'll do is I'll probably take two shots. Having said that, I haven't put a polarizer on yet, and I will put a polarizer on. Take the glare off the surface of the water as it's coming down. That means that if I'm cutting through that glare, those darker bits are going to be darker, and it means that the contrast between that and the white foamy bits that are rushing down will be more prominent in the image. We'll also take some of the glare off the rocks, and there's a rock face on the opposite side, which is pretty much facing where the sun's going to set, so that's getting quite a bit of glare there, so the polarizer will probably cut that down. It'll be nice and dark, which will be good. But also, I'm in the forest, and so there's glare coming off the foliage of these leaves, and the polarizer will make sure that the green of those leaves really pop in the image. So it's definitely worth putting a polarizer on. So it's always difficult to shoot in the rain. Lots of challenges there. The main challenge, of course, are the drips of water that you'll get on your lens. Besides that, you've got to kind of protect your gear somewhat. I'm not that worried because both the Z7 and the Z50 that I'm capturing the video on have quite good weather sealing. So I'm not so worried about my gear as such. Having said that, I do care about it. But I'm more interested in making sure that there's no drips on the front of the lens or on the polarizer as I try and put the polarizer on. Because if there's little drips of water that get in between the lens and the polarizer, they're going to be quite challenging to get off. Some of those watermarks can be taken off the image in post, but sometimes it can be quite challenging depending on the image that you've taken. So I just try and put as much effort as I can into making sure that the watermarks and the drips aren't on the front of the lens. All right, so I've just taken a series of shots. I started off at 1/3 of a second for a shutter speed, f8 for my aperture, and ISO 64. And then I just took a series of different exposures from 1/3 right up to around about a second. And it was around about a second where I noticed that the highlights were blown out. So I've got probably a series of 7 to 10 images there that I'll be able to pick and choose which ones I use for my final image. I'll probably take the image with the 1/3 of a second for the water because on the back of the screen 1/3 seem to be quite good because there's a lot of water moving down the falls and down the river past the camera. So 1/3 of a second was a pretty good shutter speed to capture the movement of the water. And then I needed to take a longer exposure just to be able to pick out some of the darker areas so that I can get the detail in that as well. Now that I've taken the series of shots, what I'll do is I'll put my hand in front of the lens and take one more shot. And that'll make sure that when I've got the images back in Lightroom, I can tell that the images to the left, or just before of that, are a series of images that I want to use to make the final image. While I'm here, I may as well turn the camera around and see whether I can grab a portrait composition of the falls.
Before I share that portrait shot, I'd just like to thank Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Building a website through Squarespace was one of the best things I did for my photography because I've created my own space on the internet where I can display my images as well as share my photography adventures. I decided to use Squarespace because of how quick and easy it was to build a website. They offer a large range of gorgeous templates which are packed full of features. Plus they're responsive, so my site looks great whether you're looking at it on a mobile phone, a tablet or a desktop, which is really important nowadays. The website is also easy to maintain because it doesn't matter whether I'm at home or on the road, I can quickly update it through the browser or the app that you can download. If you're just starting off, you might have a couple of questions, and for that you can turn to their award-winning 24/7 customer service and they'll be happy to help you out. You can start your free trial right now at squarespace.com, where you can begin building your site in a matter of seconds. If you do check them out and you want to go ahead with a website beyond the trial, make sure you go to squarespace.com/Andrew Marr to get 10% off your first purchase.
So that's it from Beetle Up Falls. If you enjoyed the video or any of the images, please give the video a like. It really does help the channel out. If you're interested in landscape photography, then please consider subscribing and hit the notification bell so you're notified when I upload my next video. But until next time guys, thanks very much for watching.